We're going to be trying to stump somebody we've had on the program before.
First, the players. Meet KGW radio host Norman B. and Lewis MacArthur, author of the comprehensive book, Oregon Geographic Names.
You are the man that knows everything there is to know about Oregon place names.
Well, flattery will get you everywhere. Quite right.
Then the anchors. Etiquette discourages showing rival newscasters, and we don't want to play favorites, so we'll call them simply A, B, C, and of course, News 8's Anchor D. Their job? Read the description of a real geographic name, and Mr. MacArthur must guess which description is wrong.
Is everybody ready?
In 1937, local church leaders launched a campaign to have the name officially changed to Bible Creek.
Mine is Pebble Springs.
Berlin is a community near Hamilton Creek, about 7 miles southeast of Lebanon.
It was named for Alexander Goodpasture.
After the anchors read their suspect descriptions, Mr. MacArthur ponders. Mr. B asks A through D if they know which is real and which is not.
I think mine was pretty darn preposterous.
I think I would pick Pebble Springs. That sounds a little flaky to me.
Now, of course, these high-profile Oregonians know their state.
Well, I'm going to tell you that not one of you are right.
Goodpasture Island was named after Alexander Goodpasture. Berlin was a condensed version of Burrell's Inn. And Pebble Springs was named after Pebble Springs whiskey. So even though she didn't know it, Anchor A told the wrong story of how Bible Creek got its name from a disreputable minister.
Lewis.
Oh, the creek was named for A.S. Bible, who settled there, and I will have to look up to date to see when he settled, but it was in the...
And of course, Mr. MacArthur knew which was which all along. Mr. B couldn't fool him. But Mr. B did fake out A through D. They'll now go back and study their Oregon geographic names, and next time, maybe they'll know the stories, such as the one about the Douglas County town named Anchor. In Southwest Portland with photographer Milt Ritter, I'm Larry Shoup, News 8.
You can reach me. We're talking about row houses. We're talking about arson. We're talking about idiots.
Ron Still is upset that someone would set fire to row houses in northwest Portland, and Still has the perfect forum to tell people what he thinks. The former police chief and candidate for mayor is on the air each night from 6 to 9 doing talk radio.
Hi, this is Ron Still back with you on the talk station 620 KGW.
Still entertained 2 guests from the northwest neighborhood, and there were 1 or 2 calls from people glad the houses had been burned. Ron Still can't believe it.
So you're in favor of somebody torching those row houses?
Let's just say that I'm happy that it occurred.
With an attitude like yours, that if you can't do it legally and we can't do it within our structure, then you say do it illegally, and I really think it'd be good if you not only moved from Northwest, but moved from the world, as far as I'm concerned.
The world of talk radio may seem like an odd place for Ron Still to surface, but he says Portland's just getting its money's worth.
We had one caller who said he was glad. I think he's a fool.
The public really has paid a lot of money for my training, if you think about it. 30 years as a police officer. All the things that I've done, hopefully I can now share with people.
Still says his specialty is helping people solve their problems with government. Still's problem with government is that he couldn't beat Bud Clark when he ran for mayor. He was critical of Clark during the campaign. He's willing to stay critical now, though that won't be his focus.
It's so easy to bash on Bud, you could do it any time. My intent is never to be destructive. I will be critical if I feel somebody should be criticized. But my intent is to make it a better community. No question about it.
Tim Daly for News 8.
Okay, we've gotten your input. Thanks
thank
for
you
calling.
very much, Ron.
Good night, Jeff.
On the top station, 620 KGW.
Good morning, it's 7:07. I'm Tori Ryder. You're listening to
Four-term Oregon House Representative Drew Davis says he came to talk and listen, but when he hit the air, talked mainly around the issues.
You know, I can't sit here and answer guilty, not guilty on the charges that I have to actually go to court on. I get my day in court.
Davis was arrested 2 weeks ago and charged with drug-related felonies and other misdemeanors. Newburgh police say Davis ran from them after picking up prescription painkillers obtained with phony doctor's orders. Newburgh's police chief called to talk about the case.
They're all scheduled drugs that we seized. Okay.
That's a lie.
Well, Drew, we're not going to get into that.
A search of Davis's car turned up bags of drugs, a machine gun, 2,000 rounds of ammunition, and lots of pornographic magazines, although Davis says he's not sure where they came from.
I mean, the first I knew about it is when I read about it in a paper or heard about it on TV, I guess.
You never knew they were...
Although Davis invited himself to the program, he did not come with lots of answers. It was not a friendly forum.
As a Christian, do you not hold yourself up...
I'm not going to let you do any Christian bashing. I'm going to speak the
political... Not trying to bash Christians. In fact, I'm trying to save their reputation. I think you're the worst thing that's happened to Christianity in years. If that's what you call yourself, a dyed-in-the-wool Christian, and then you go around hauling drugs in the trunk of your car, dangerous weapons, 2,000 rounds of ammunition, Jugs magazine, and you want to say that those are Christian things to do. I'm sure that there are many, many Christians listening to the show who would be appalled to hear that.
He heard worse than that from some listeners.
I'm suicide now.
I think he's still copping out. And
I agree with you.
I think he's a rat, and I think he's a slime ball.
Louder, Jenny. We can't hear you. Rat and slime ball, what else?
But he also got advice. This from Newburgh's police chief, whom Davis calls a liar.
He needs attention, but he's getting the wrong attention.
I've
enrolled. He needs help. He needs support. He needs help. I told him that not as a police officer, but a person that really was concerned. I leave him with that thought.
All right. Well, thank you
very much.
Thank you.
You know, that sounds real good for copy, but tomorrow the truth is going to come out on that police chief.
This sounds like a threat.
No, it's not a threat. It's not a threat. It's a promise.
Davis says he's not through talking about his case before it goes to court. He promises new revelations on Thursday. In Southwest Portland, Tim Storrs, News 8.
Why did you call Mr. Bishop a liar?
Oh, wow. Look at those drumsticks. Just two people. Wow! Oh, they sell those for $1,500 each, and you're trying to sell one to the Washington Park Zoo.
Well, no, actually, Dennis, who is the curator there...
If we're lucky, they'll jump into a part of the river that isn't that deep, that isn't that turbulent. And they always go down to the bottom of the river, bury their nose. We take a flashlight, you can see them. We put a net around them, and I reach down and grab them.
Those drumsticks. Do people eat those?
Yes, in Cameroon they're considered a delicacy. Actually, they're probably the best tasting frog legs in the world.
Have you tried them?
Yes, I have.
And you like them?
Portlanders are talking about, thinking about, worried about the Persian Gulf.
I'm really frightened. I'm really afraid of what's going to be happening for our nation and for the world.
War is hell. You ever been in one? It's no picnic, I assure you.
Interested in knowing with the Persian Gulf deadline just one day away, what's on your mind?
Well, I'm really upset. I have a grandson, age 20, who's in the infantry over there, and I'm really upset.
Nothing really. If we got to fight, we got to fight. I wish we could get around it.
You know, let's go over there and do the job right, finish it up.
There are still some 800 lines open. 1-800...
Reflections of the Gulf crisis. At KGW Radio this morning, the telephones just wouldn't quit.
Oh, a lot of calls. Yeah, I mean, people want to talk about the Persian Gulf, and I mean, it's the biggest deployment since World War II. I mean, aren't we all concerned about it?
At a local brokerage, another reflection of the crisis, early morning stock trading up sharply.
Well, the news over the weekend sure makes it sound like we're going to war, and war is not typically good for the stock market.
Good as gold. The Persian Gulf crisis is triggering a new demand for gold. On the markets today, it surged.
The people are concerned a lot, you know, not only about their loved ones and family over in the Gulf, but about their financial matters as well.
I buy gold just for the safety that it gives my portfolio. If everything else goes to hell, at least I've got something there.
Local travel agents are seeing a reflection of the crisis. Bookings are down on U.S. airlines flying abroad.
And that has to do with many of our corporate clients. Some of them are waiting to schedule business trips, and some may be rerouting the travelers.
And after this weekend's huge peace rally, the biggest in the nation, one of the biggest of all time in Portland, today something quieter. At a Beaverton church, a 24-hour-a-day prayer vigil for peace in the Gulf.
We'll continue to pray for what we hope will happen, and that is that war will not begin.
No matter what their politics, Portlanders are hoping for one of two things: that war does not break out, but if it does, that it's over fast. I'm Walden Kirsch, News 8. Few events in this century have riveted the attention of Americans like Operation Desert Storm. Television viewership is sharply up.
I don't think at this point anybody's getting sick and tired of this. I think they're very, very concerned about what we're doing there. They're very, very concerned about our troops, and they're very interested in the news.
The high interest in Operation Desert Storm is reflected in the sales of newspapers. The Oregonian is printing tens of thousands of additional copies, including a special extra edition each morning.
The public is news hungry. They, you know, this is the first time in years that you've seen hawkers in downtown Portland. And these hawkers are ex-newsboys that used to sell papers years ago.
Extra, extra, just 35 cents, your late Oregonian. Well, I sold around 1,000 yesterday.
People are reading about the war and talking about it.
Ruth in Vancouver, okay. Ruth, you're in touch with 620 KGW.
I've got a 19-year-old son, and it really scares me that the draft might come back into effect and he would have to go over there.
The producer of this talk show says Operation Desert Storm is the only topic callers are discussing.
This is all they want to talk about. Everybody thinks that what they have to say is really important.
Defensive lines.
With war focusing the attention of Oregonians, video stores report business is slow.
If there's dramatic events such as, you know, the missiles being launched with probable chemical weapons, that'll probably keep people glued to their TVs.
What the backbone of Operation Desert Storm. One, sound. This country is united.
Historically, the public's attention span is short, and already there are signs news coverage is returning to normal. With the exception of special reports, all three major networks return today to regular programming. Don Reese, News 8.
Psychologist Dr. Elliot Weiner is our guest, and we're talking about the impact, the anxiety level that most of us are feeling over the war that's erupted in the Persian Gulf.
On 620 KGW Radio's Peter Weisbeck show, the talk is of the war in the mind.
I think people are feeling more helpless and depressed on the one hand, and I think people are becoming are information junkies about this. I think when you're feeling out of control, one of the ways you try to get back in control is through a sense of information. You know,
but according to Dr. Weiner, many are losing control of their daily lives. Their thirst for information has deprived them of the calming influences, so the stress is magnified. And the stress for adults can be magnified even more for children.
Kids see this on television, they see the bombers attacking on television, and particularly as the war drags on and they start to see casualties, their main concern and their main nightmares are going to be on, gee, what's going to happen to me? You know, are my parents going to die? Am I going to die? Are people I know going to die? And the kids' feeling of safety gets ripped away very quickly in these times.
And perhaps most stressful of all is our inability to understand the mind of Saddam Hussein.
You know, the cultural differences are so great that we cannot understand how he could fight a war, lose, and still be powerful in that region. And yet, look what happened after 8 years in the Iraq-Iran war. He didn't win, and yet he came out as a major player.
How is he faring with these launching of these Scud missiles?
I think he's doing an effective job of keeping the world on edge. I just think he's keeping the world terrorized, which I think is one of his goals. And you could destroy most every weapon he has, and he can still do some of this worldwide terrorism by releasing just one missile a day. Imagine what that does to the people who have to take shelter every day.
Right here? Yes, this is very much a psychological war in Iraq, in Israel, in Saudi Arabia. And it is a psychological war thousands of miles away, right here at home.
hopefully we'll be seeing some solutions to that in the future.
If you're a listener of talk radio,
Gail on a Cellular One phone, you're on 620 KGW.
you know that more and more callers are using not their home phones, but their car phones.
Let's go to Shannon on a Cellular One phone. Shannon, you're in touch with 620 KGW.
KGW's Bill Gallant says half his calls are from portable cell phones.
That the use of cellular phones has revolutionized the talk show industry. There's no question about it.
Yeah, I'm actually attempting to gather news here. To find out just how the radio business has changed, we called an expert from our cell phone, of course. How have cell phones changed the way talk radio is done?
What it allows is a wider variety of audience.
Joe Uris says cell phones usually indicate money, and money generally means knowledge.
They need to make business calls from their phone. That means they're very, very busy kind of people. They're usually, I suspect, more informed.
It's very odd driving with a phone stuck to my ear. Only one hand is available. So perhaps they're better informed, but are they more dangerous drivers as well?
Tim.
Joe and I brought Tom and his cell phone into the conversation for some insight and got a near accident instead.
This is a good point, but I'll take... Oops, look out. Yeah, that was close.
Thanks, I'm going to let you go, Tom.
Bye now.
Bye, Tom.
My terrible fear is that they get into their call with me, and then something, like a lane change happens on the freeway or somebody stops suddenly, and I'm responsible for the maiming of a human being.
So it's a trade-off, maybe. We gain intelligent, witty conversation on the radio in exchange for more treacherous roadways. Well, no one said progress would come easy. Someday all these cars may have TVs in them as well. Tim Daly, News 8.
Action.
Courtrooms, real or make-believe, are almost a second home for Ann Rule and her daughter Leslie. For 17 years, the two have vicariously lived a life of crime. Ann writes the words, daughter Leslie takes the pictures. She is Ann Rule's personal photographer. When Good Housekeeping magazine needs pictures of the author on her current book tour, Leslie gets the assignment. After all, no one knows the angles on Ann Rule better.
She does make me look good, and I get to go through the pictures and say, I don't want that one.
The two spend long, tedious hours working together at trials. Many of the pictures that appear in Ann Rule's books, such as the current national bestseller, If You Really Loved Me, were taken by Leslie.
Which introduces us to the man Rule calls the ultimate sociopath. Good morning.
Good morning.
Is he that bad, Mr. Brown? What's his name? David Brown.
I think so. This is a man who brainwashed his own 14-year-old daughter into murdering his 22-year-old wife.
At times, this mother-daughter relationship is like working under a microscope, especially on long assignments out of town.
I think we work together really well. Sometimes if we're together for 2 weeks and when we're in Santa Ana, we'll get on each other's nerves a little bit, but I think that's natural.
Leslie took an interest in her mother's unusual occupation as a youngster. By that time, this divorced mother had been writing 2 articles a week for detective magazines just to keep food on the table.
If it hadn't been for the 4 children, I wouldn't have written, probably. If I'd had a happy marriage, I probably wouldn't have written.
Since Leslie Rule can remember, Ann Rule has been turning out bestsellers on killers. Crime writing and the photographs that enhance it have become a way of life.
Well, I really don't know any different. She always had a lot of interesting stories to tell. It was sort of spooky when we picked up the phone and Ted Bundy was on the line.
You're in touch with 620 KGW Portland. I'm Ken Brown, General Manager of 620 KGW. It is my responsibility to announce a major change at KGW Radio. Beginning immediately, we will begin broadcasting the programming of KINK FM 102.
The surprise announcement puts the entire staff of KGW Radio out of work.
I've been in this business since I got out of college. It's the only job I've ever had. And so maybe it's time that I take a look at another profession. I don't know.
In all, 40 people helped put KGW's news and talk shows on the air. Topics ranged from serious political debate to a not-so-serious visit from a giant fraud.
I think there was a lot of discussion of ideas and politics and culture, that otherwise won't exist. without it. I think the city's going to miss KGW.
Seattle-based King Broadcasting Company has been trying to sell both KGW AM and Kink FM for months without success. Company officials hope the cost-cutting layoffs and format change will help attract a buyer. KGW is Portland's oldest radio station, signing on for the first time in 1922. In the years since, KGW has been part of the community. Its programs familiar to tens of thousands of listeners. In its prime, KGW was #1 in the ratings and featured popular morning DJs and listener contests.
It's 7:15. Get me KGW. No problem. What won't work? The pay increase? That's going to work?
KGW's recent switch to a news talk format was an expensive move and a ratings disappointment. But staff members like talk show host Ralph Steadman say they'll leave feeling proud.
Nobody in America got to do what we did. This was a special event. So that's one thing that the listeners can be proud of being a part of. This happens to be, from a personal standpoint, the greatest career experience of my life. And it's because of them. So, see ya.
Company officials say all 40 KGW staff members affected by the layoffs will receive a generous benefits package.
The company has taken great steps to make sure that they are treated fair and with compassion.
You can write.
But that didn't seem to matter to the hundreds of listeners who called to complain as the talk stopped on KGW and the talk show host went out into the streets looking for work. Don Reese, News 8.